Hi, everybody, and welcome to Signature West Podcast. I'm your host, Sam West from Palm Springs, California. Today's topic is probably the hottest topic in the real estate industry. In my 32 plus years of selling real estate, I don't recall a topic with this much of magnitude and the uncertainty of what might happen in the future. So, my friend Jim Remley is going to help us understand what happened, what might happen in the future, and how can we all navigate through this? When I mean all, I mean sellers, realtors, buyers. So let's dive in. Hi, Jim.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me here.
So before we get started, let's just talk about you a little bit.
Okay.
You started when you were 19 years old?
I did, yeah. So I've been in the business. I think it's 34 years now. So it's been a while.
And you founded a brokerage, your brokerage, I suppose, or a brokerage when you were 24 years old.
Yeah, my first company we founded in when I was 24, and we grew that to just me and my partner. We grew that to 17 offices across the state of Oregon. So it was the largest independent company in Oregon for a while. I sold that in 06, and I taught for NAR for several years. I taught the ABR class, the accredited by representation designation, and all the designation programs that NAR has. And then I got recruited to come down and build another company in Southern Oregon. So it grew that from 30 agents to 250 agents in 3 offices, top 500 companies in America.
How long did that take to go from A to Z?
On the last build out of the company, it took 10 years to go from basically $100 million in production to $1.4 billion in production a year, closing about 3,000 transactions a year.
And what made you at 19 say, hey, I want to do this at 19 years old?
Well, I was in college and working at a lumber mill. I dropped out of college and just decided, my buddy actually talked me into getting my real estate license. I finished, he didn't. And I just kind of went in it because I knew I wanted to do something more than work in a lumber mill my whole life. Not that there's anything wrong with that, just for me personally, I just needed to do something else.
You also wrote 2 books, one called Make Millions Selling Real Estate, and the other one, Sell Your Home in Any Market.
Yep.
You are the principal broker for John L. Scott in Oregon, I believe.
Yeah, I'm one of the principal brokers. I actually sold my company, the one I just built, and I'm still there as a principal broker. Yes.
And you became full-time coaching in 2023. To what capacity, and what does that look like?
So I specialize in brokerage coaching because that's my passion, helping brokerages and team leaders grow their organizations. So I coach a group of people throughout the country, a very highly select group of people that want to grow their companies and want to do a better job of recruiting and retaining agents, building profitability, building systems, and working to build a great culture that attracts agents. So that's my specialization.
Interesting. Here's the one that really I'm more curious about than anything else at all. You were instructor for NAR. NAR is National Association of Realtors.
Yes. Yep.
What did that look like, and what exactly did you do? Like, what was your role?
So I taught all over the country. I taught primarily the ABR designation, but I also taught several other classes. I taught the senior housing specialist class. I taught the assistant certification class. And I was involved with GRI at times and CRS at times, but my main focus was ABR. So I taught a lot of ABR classes across the country. So ABR is helping agents get better at representing buyers, and it's very timely now because of what we're going through. But if any listeners are listening right now that have not got their ABR designation, I highly recommend they get it now.
And just dive into that. What is that exactly?
The ABR, it's basically a 3-day class. It's a designation program that will help you to, first of all, understand buyer representation at a higher level, but also develop your own buyer presentation, develop your skills at presenting your value as a realtor to buyers, and educate you about buyer representation agreements and how to present those as well. So there's a lot of information packed in there.
So hold on to that thought because we're going to get to that later on. So now that we unraveled you a little bit, what happened a few months ago? What happened with NAR? What happened with the class action lawsuits. What happened and what was the cause for all of that?
So if you go back in time a little bit to 2019, there was a lawsuit that was filed from a person named Mr. Burnett, or a couple Burnett, and then another couple Sitzer. And they're alleged that they were kind of duped into paying for buyer representation when they listed their houses for sale. And so this was a case that actually gained then a class action status over time. So then it became a class action suit where other sellers could join. And that suit progressed through the court system. Another suit came along that's very similar, called the Mueller case. It's a whole different class action lawsuit that it kind of bubbled up at the same time.
Same cause?
What's that?
The same cause for the same reason?
The same exact claim that sellers were duped into paying buyer representation fees, and they shouldn't have paid them. What happened is that just in the last month or so, what happened is that the Burnett Sitzer case, NAR lost the case. NAR was one of the defendants, but a lot of other defendants were involved with it. Major players like Keller Williams, Anywhere, which owns the Sotheby's, ERA, Coldwell Banker, Century 21 Brands, Remax was involved with it, many others. But in the lead up to that case being lost by NAR, who would not settle, Remax settled and said, we'll change our business practices. Anywhere settled and said, I would change our business practice. And they settled by paying $83.5 million Anywhere, I think. And then
Remax was 55 million, Reology was 83.5 million.
Right. So people say, okay, what was in the settlements? What in the settlement agreements that have been approved by the court now? What those said is that when Anywhere realtors go out and Remax realtors go out and do a listing presentation, they need to be super clear with sellers that they do not have to pay a buyer agent commission. They can, but they need to be clear that they don't have to. And that's really a fundamental change in the way that business has been done, really. I mean, NAR has taken this position for decades that there had to be some form of buyer agent commission, whether it was $1 or a penny, there had to be something there. What happened is, as soon as the settlements happened and Remax settled, and first of all, Anywhere settled, then Remax followed a week later, NAR pivoted and said, okay, we'll agree that you can have a 0 in the BAC column now across the country on all MLSs that they're in control of. You can do 0, which is a massive pivot for them. The Justice Department said that's not good enough. We want you to remove BAC completely from the MLS systems. We don't want to even see it there. That's a whole nother conversation, as the Department of Justice is watching these cases very carefully. Long story short, NAR loses the case. They lose the Sitzer Burnett case. They lost it to the tune of $1.8 billion, which was trebled by the court system to basically over $5 billion. And immediately the week after that, the attorneys that had that case immediately turned around and they turned it into a national lawsuit. So they won that case and they said, we're going to go national. So now they've named a lot of other real estate companies, and this case has a potential for hundreds of billions of dollars in potential claims.
And that's the one that's coming up?
No, the Mueller case is coming up. This is a brand new case from the attorneys that did the Burnett Sitzer case have filed a new suit.
Okay, so hold on, because now I'm confused. So everybody can be on the same page here. So we started with the Remax and Reology, and then they settled, and that was one situation. And my understanding was another one with the Burnett versus NAR, and that involved Berkshire Hathaway, Keller Williams, and that was the one that just happened in October.
No, so what happened is the settlement we're talking about with Anywhere, used to be Reology, and Remax, they were co-defendants in the Burnett Sitzer case. That's what they settled. They settled the Burnett Sitzer.
Okay, all right, okay.
And others, but that was part of it. And then NAR did not settle. Keller Williams did not settle. And there's several others that did not settle. They all lost. They lost.
Now I understand.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
But now you have another case, the Mueller case, which is still out there. That'll probably be happening in late 2024. But now you have another case, the national level case, that's just starting to go through the court system. So here's the bottom line.
What's the Mueller case?
The Mueller case is basically the same claim, but it's a much, much bigger footprint. So instead of having the potential damages of 1.8 billion, the estimated damages on this one is $41 billion if they lose.
And
so it's just another big.
Who's involved in that? Who's the plaintiff?
It's NAR's the defendant, but all the major players, and basically the same defendants. I mean, it's all the major franchises in the country are named in it. So, so what's the outcome? A lot of realtors right now are saying, well, it doesn't matter because it's all going to be appealed. It's absolutely wrong. That is the furthest thing from the truth. So what you have to realize is that your sellers and your buyers are watching the news. They're seeing this was in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, been widely covered across the news stations. It's going to continue to be widely covered. So when a seller goes out, or you're going out to visit with a seller and talk to them about listing their house, they may turn to you and say, so Jim, I just saw on the news that I don't have to pay a buyer agent commission. Is that true? So you might say, well, it actually, it is true. You don't have to pay a buyer agent commission. Now you got to say, how am I going to talk to these sellers in a way that convinces them that they should pay a buyer agent commission, right? And so you got to change your language.
But let me stop you. So is it true as of today, or is it has already been the case? Is it going to be true when things change?
It's as of today in most MLSs across the country, because NAR has pivoted and said you could put 0 for BAC. A seller does not have to put a BAC. They can say, no, we're not going to pay that. Okay. We're not going to do it. Okay. So, and that's really always been the case. They could have put $1, they could have put a penny. It just hasn't been common practice.
Right.
But now, because of the news coverage, it probably is going to become way more common practice. So what happens is you go out to talk to the seller. Now you got to say, how am I going to deal with this in a conversational setting?
Correct.
My thoughts on this is, first of all, you need to change your listing presentation to really address this, because your competition is going to change too. So if I'm sitting with the seller, I'll say, that is true. You don't have to pay a buyer agent commission, but here's a couple things to consider with that. And that is, if we do not pay a buyer agent commission, what's going to happen, what could happen is you'll have less exposure for your house, because what you're then saying to a buyer is, we want you to pay for your own buyer representation. And the fact is, the estimate right now is 30 to 50% of buyers just don't have that. They don't have the funds to write a check to an agent. So what they'll do is they'll pivot and only look at listings where the seller is paying the buyer agent commission. So if you've taken buyer agent commission off the table, they're going to look at the 10 other properties and leave yours off the table. So that's one thing. Another thing to look at is, what's our competition doing? Okay. So I did a survey this morning and I surveyed all the properties that have sold within a mile radius of your house. And I see that there's been, 10 properties sold in the last 6 months. And here's what everybody paid for BAC. And you just line it out. That's another conversation. Another great one I heard that yesterday afternoon from another top agent is, he asked the seller, well, when you bought this house, did the seller pay for your buyer agent commission?
Right.
And they're going to say, of course. Well, yeah, it's common. I mean, that's definitely the way the real estate's been practiced for years, because what happens is the price pays for everybody's commission. You're asking a set price, the transaction pays for the buyer agent commission and the seller agent commission. If you're not going to pay the buyer agent commission, then naturally the buyer's probably going to want to pay a lower price. So it all kind of comes out in the wash. So you got to think about it that way. So whatever you're going to say, you've got to think it through about how you're going to handle this. Now, you might say, Jim, I'm a strong agent, and so I'm always going to be able to get a buyer agent commission when I'm talking to sellers. So I'm not worried about it. You still have to be worried about it. And here's why. Because let's say now I'm on the flip side and I'm working with a buyer. And in my MLS, now what's going to start to crop up, and it's already happening across the country, is you're going to start to see listings come to market that have a 0. Because what's happening is you've got listing agents that go out to a listing appointment, they're hanging on by their fingernails in this business. They're on the way out, frankly. And a seller says that to them and they say, you're right, you don't have to pay a BAC, just sign the listing. I just want a listing fee.
Right.
You're going to start to see a lot of zeros come in the market, right? And so when those zeros come in the market and I'm representing buyers and I've got 10 properties to show my buyers and 3 of them are not offering a BAC, 30% of the market, now how am I going to get paid on those? So now I have to start to learn as a buyer's agent how to have people sign buyer representation agreements where it guarantees my payment. So this is going to be critical.
Before we get to that, so can you just say, look, I'm going to only show which is not really kosher. I'm going to only show the ones that are paying. I can't show the ones that are not paying because I need to get paid.
It's not legal for us to do that. That's a violation of agency responsibilities. So that would violate our agency duties. So what we would have to say to buyers is, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, of course, the way I'm compensated generally is through a commission that's paid at closing if we're able to find you the house you like and we get you all the way to closing. If you are not in a position to write a check for my services, then we'll have to just limit our showings to only sellers that are offering a commission. So that's another way of saying what you're saying, but you have to clear that with the buyer. You have to have that conversation with the buyer.
Okay,
As
say that
agents,
one more time. Say that one more time.
I would say, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, in order for me to be in business, I have to be paid. So the way I'm generally paid is through a compensation agreement with the seller. The seller pays my fee. So there are some listings out there that are offering us zero. They're not offering to pay me. And when we have those listings that come up like that, you got the choice of writing a check for my representation, or we could just take those off the list. It's your decision what you'd like to do. Most buyers want to see all the listings, right? So we have to learn how to adapt to this market, right? So the way we learn how to adapt to this market is we have to do three things. Number one, we've got to not be a commodity and not just say we're going to throw every buyer in the car and go start showing them property that 5 minutes after we talk to them. We've got to actually sit down and say, hey, can I just take a couple minutes and show you how I work? Can I show you my process? And what we're going to do then is we're going to show them our buyer presentation, and we're going to demonstrate our value in the transaction. And I can give you a couple of important points on that buyer presentation, which agents don't think about. And that is, you got to understand what buyers want from us. Here's the top 4 things buyers want from us. Number 1, helping find the right house to buy. Number 2 is helping with price negotiations. Number 3 is helping with just overall negotiations. And number 4 is helping with the paperwork. That's the top. When you ask them, that's what they want. So you think about your presentation now. My first page of my presentation is going to talk about what you need, what you want in a house in the search process. But my next step is how I'm going to start to build value. So I'm not just like every other realtor in the market. Because if I'm just putting your stuff in MLS, the buyer can do that. They can go to Zillow. They can go to realtor.com. They do not need us to do that. So now what I'm going to say is, Sam, every agent can put you into MLS. Every agent can search for properties. Here's what I do. I leave no stone unturned. And what I mean by that is, when you tell me what you want, I'm going to look at for sale by owners, things that are not listed in the MLS. I'm going to look at expired listings, things that were on the market that came off the market. I'm going to network with all my top realtor friends about coming soon listings, which have not hit the MLS yet. If you tell me an area you want to live in, I'll go in there and canvass the neighborhood and see if there's anybody about to come to market. So I'm going to leave no stone unturned. I'm going to go the extra mile to find unlisted properties, because we're in a low inventory market, 20-year low on inventory. And a lot of times I find is the best properties never hit the MLS because the market's so competitive. I'm sure that's kind of what you're looking for in an agent, right? They're going to say yes. But just by me saying that, I'm now positioning myself at a higher level. I'll go deeper than that, and I'll say, go ahead. You have a question?
So let's say, okay, so I'm the buyer. You, Jim. I said, Jim, that sounds great. That sounds wonderful. I just don't have that kind of money to pay beside my purchase price. What am I supposed to do?
So here's how we'll handle this. Well, here's how I work. If you want to work with me, I use a buyer representation agreement. I'll show you how this looks. It is going to say that I'm going to be paid a fee when we get to closing. But here's the deal. When we're out looking at properties, this is a transparent process. So when we're going to look at a listing, we'll know if a BAC is being offered. Okay. It'll say if it's offered or not. You can then decide, I want to look at this property, Jim, because a BAC is being paid by the seller. I'm totally good with it. If I show you one where no BAC is being offered, you can say, I want to exclude that from being seen. Okay. But let me tell you why I need to have this signed, this agreement, this document signed, because there's a lot of times where I'm going to be able to negotiate on your behalf and get the seller to pay that BAC. I'll give you an example. For sale by owner. If I go out and talk to for sale by owner and they say, hey, I don't want to pay a fee, they always say that first. I might be able to bring them an offer and include the fee in the offer where they're going to pay the fee, and they may agree to pay it. And in fact, a lot of times I'm able to do that. Same with expired listings, same with people that are in a neighborhood. So in order for me to go to work for you at that level, I need to have, some firepower to let them know that I'm your exclusive agent. And that, but at the end of the day, if the seller won't pay it, you have the choice not to go forward. You can say, this isn't the right house for me. But I'm going to tell you 95% of the time, I'm going to be able to get the seller to pay the fee. Now, let me just back up a second on this, because you're going to see this happening in a lot of states. It's already happening in my state in Oregon, where the Oregon Association of Realtors is already looking at changing our offer forms to include a line that says, check the box, here's what the buyer agent commission is, so that we can actually negotiate it within the offer. For years and years and years, as realtors, we were trained we can't negotiate commissions within the sale.
Correct.
But here's what's changing. The reason that was the case is because it would be considered interfering with the contractual relationship you have with the seller.
Correct.
Imagine now going forward that the seller is only paying for their representation. So I'm not interfering with your contractual relationship you have with your client. I'm talking about you paying a fee on behalf of my buyer, just like you pay a closing cost. just like you pay for incentives,
It's
you know,
part of
buy
the,
down
it's
on
part of
interest
the
rates,
offer. It's part of the
part of
initial
the
offer
offer.
that you're
You can
presenting.
choose to reject it if you want,
Right,
right?
correct.
So that's going to be a shift in mindset and a shift we're all going to have to come to.
And that's happening already in Oregon, you said.
They're looking at changing the offer forms, and it's going to happen in a lot of states. In Oregon and already in Washington, it's happening January 1st. There and in 17 other states, it's already the case where buyers are required to, if they're working with an agent, to sign a buyer representation agreement, no different than a listing agreement. So that's going to be common practice in Oregon, common practice in Washington, probably in the next year.
Required by the broker?
Required by the state that if we're gonna work together, it's like an engagement letter with an attorney. You got to sign something saying you're working with me.
It's a requirement. It's I can't work with you unless you do this.
I have to have this signed.
It's
Yeah,
law.
it's going to be the new standard. Now that doesn't mean it's a set fee. It means you could say I'm going to charge you $500. I'm going to charge you 1%, 2%, 3%, whatever number you think your value is worth. But let me speak to fees for a second. So here's the mistake that a lot of agents are going to make out of the gate is they're going to say, well, I feel bad because I don't want to charge my buyer too much. So maybe I'll just charge them 1%, you know, or 0.5% or whatever the number is. Here's the problem with that. The problem with that is that when you go out and show a house and they actually are offering more than what you've agreed to get paid, you then have to go back to your buyer and say, so do you want me to waive that extra amount or do you want that to come off the price? So you want to be careful. You don't want to go too low. In fact, what you'd rather be in is in a different position. Let's say that I say on my buyer agent and commission agreement, I'm going to charge 3 or 4% or whatever your number is. And now the seller's offering 2.5. I'd rather be able to say to my buyer, I'm going to discount it to 2.5 because I don't want you to pay anymore. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Conversation, right?
A new agent, a newcomer, a new not seasoned, somebody just came on the market, and trying to, without a huge resume.
Yeah.
How are they going to convince their buyer to, what value can they bring to the buyer to work with them? Because now they have to see the value of the agent.
Yeah, so it's going to get back down to the presentation, and it's no different than a new agent taking a listing. It's exactly the same mindset.
It's the same mindset.
So we got to demonstrate value through a presentation. So as I was talking about, first thing is talking about no stone unturned. But now I'm gonna go one step further than that, because if you go on TikTok or you go on YouTube Shorts or you look at any social media, but you're seeing this huge uproar that agents are overpaid on the buy side. It's everywhere. So when people believe that we're overpaid, you say, well, why do you think we're overpaid? They'll be like, well, because I can let myself into a house. I don't need an agent to do that. I can go on MLS and search. I don't need an agent to do that. What value is the agent bringing to the table? So we got to show them, here's why I'm worth 20 grand. Here's why I'm worth 30 grand or 15 grand or whatever. And so here's how I'm going to do it. In the presentation, I'm going to talk about no stone unturned, but then I'm going to get into deeper stuff. I'm going to say, but let me tell you something, Sam. Actually, the easiest part is finding the house. And believe it or not, that's the easy part for me. Absolutely. The hard part starts when we find the house. That's when my work really begins. Now I'm going to really sell value. And I'm going to say, so what I do on every listing that you're interested in is I do deep research. And here's what my research looks like. I'm going to look at the zoning of the property, making sure the property is being used for its intended purposes and what exactly you can use it for. We're going to look at the CC&Rs. We're going to look at the homeowners association and how well they've been managing this property and the common elements of the property. We're going to look at assessments and what's the assessor done over the last several years. We're going to look at plat maps, aerial maps. I'm going to look at overlays. I'm going to dig into all the permits that have been pulled on this house for the last 5 years. Were they all finalized? I'm going to look at what the seller paid for the house. Have they refinanced the house? I'm going to dig so deep into that property. I'm going to know more about that listing than the homeowner themselves knows. And you're going to know that information, and you're going to be able to negotiate at a much, much higher level. And so that's where I'm going to really, they're going to be like, whoa, no other agent's talking to me about this. No other agent's going to go to that level. I'm also going to do a buyer CMA. I'm going to give you trend lines for the neighborhood. I'm going to go deep on all this stuff. So they're going to be like blown away when I'm talking to them.
You also mentioned social media, which it's so crazy right now. As I mentioned to you earlier, I met you on TikTok, which for the ones out there that don't, they still believe that TikTok is for the 15 years and younger, you're mistaken. That's another conversation. The amount of hate and the amount of ridicule from the public to the agents in the industry. I'm wondering, where did that come from? And B, what caused it? And C, it's such an uphill battle for or people like us to tell them, look, you're so mistaken. I am worth X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. I think the reason is because we haven't explained our value proposition to buyers. We explain it to sellers. And so a lot of times you don't get this pushback on the seller side as much. You get it from the buy side. And the buy side truly believes that we're super overpaid because they don't see the work behind the scenes. And so a lot of it has to do with the fact that over for the last 100 years, we've never done a buyer presentation and demonstrated value. And now we have to start doing a buyer presentation. I think that's a lot of it. And we have to outline our work exactly what we're going to do for a buyer. If we can say, hey, here's 100 things I do for buyers, and we can put that in writing for a buyer to see, they'll be very impressed. But we got to put it out there, And here's the biggest danger in all this is that there's a lot of agents that don't believe they're worth what they're worth, and so they'll discount because they've been talked into the fact that they're not worth what they're worth. So
They
that's
believe that a discount rate is how I can say this. That discount rate is always a good thing. They don't believe it's related to a value that you give. So therefore, I'm going to catch more fish if I just charge less for my hourly rate.
right.
And I think that's a disservice. I think that's not really knowing your worth, and that's a
Exactly.
big mistake.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when you have something that's really valuable and it's valuable, that's when you're going to charge more. I'll give you a classic example of that myself personally. I was one of the first agents in my entire state to start using buyer representation agreements 35 years ago. So, and here's how this happened is that I knew I had this buyer that wanted a specific type of property. He wanted timber property. And I said, let me figure out how I can find timber property, which is always a great idea, by the way. If you have a buyer that they know what they want, then go find a way to find it for them. That's how you're going to make the most money. So I went to the county and I said, I want to get a computerized record of your records. I said, we don't have it. It's in microfiche back then. This is how old I am.
Oh my goodness, yes, yeah.
So I bought a microfiche machine. I bought their microfiche for $160 for the whole county. I got a 300, it was like a $3,000 computer at the time running DOS, Excel DOS, hired an assistant, and she took the microfiche machine on her left side, turned and put the data in the right side on the computer. And we computerized the entire county records before the county had done it. And then we began farming that for timber property. And so now I had a proprietary system. And then my proprietary system, I went to my buyer and I said, I'm going to find you as much timber property as you want, but here's what you're going to pay me. And you're going to sign a buyer representation. You're going to pay me 13%, 10% commission, and a 3% bonus.
Oh wow.
Every single property I bring you. And you're going to pay it. The seller's not going to pay me anything. You're
Wow.
going to pay it. Guess what? He signed it, was happy to do it. And we made millions and millions of dollars as a result because I had something he couldn't get anywhere else.
Right.
If you can figure out a way to do that, guys, that's where you really start.
That's
to
where
make
you're winning, right? So obviously, there's a lot of talk about the appeal and all that, which takes time, takes maybe years. Yet the problem is not going to go anywhere. Do you see the changes or implementations, like you said already? Oregon is doing some changes. California is a strange bird. California kind of like dances to its own drum. Or do you see people waiting till the appeal and all of that takes place later on? Let's not worry about it now. Let's wait till we see what happens, and then we'll address the elephant in the room.
You can't wait. The market will dictate the change. It's not going to be realtors waiting around and the courts deciding to change. The market's already dictating change. I coach people across the country. You're already starting to see zero listings hitting the market. So you waiting isn't going to work because you're going to have to deal with this when you're representing buyers. Because what if your buyer falls in love with the listing tomorrow morning that has a 0 BAC? What are you going to do? You're going to do for free?
I'm going to call you. What do I do?
Yeah. What are you going to do? You're going to have to deal with this like right now. You're also going to have to deal with it at a seller's appointment. So it's what I'm telling agents is it's not like you're going to wait for next week or next year. Now you have to build a buyer presentation and you got to change your seller presentation.
So I guess the point taken is sellers are already, and might even be more coming up, doing the practice of zero on the listing, and therefore the buyers or buyers agents needs to be aware and be ready and all that.
100%. Yep. 100%. Yep.
Wild times, no?
Yes, crazy times to live.
I mean, it's just really, I don't know, like I said earlier, I got my license in 1991 and I just was like status quo, you fail, 50 goes here, 50 goes here, and we're good to go.
Easy.
Yeah. Jim, It's been a delight. It's been a
Thank
wealth
you.
of information. I can't begin to tell you, I've learned a lot, and hopefully you guys out there learned a lot as well. Thank you for doing this, and I hope that we all do good practice, especially if you're an agent. I hope that you all take the buyer's agreement and really understand it and know how to talk to your clients out there, because none of us want to get in trouble and none of us want to work for free. I don't know about you. I don't want to work for free. So happy New Year to everybody. Happy holidays to you guys. Thank you, Jim, so much.
My pleasure.
And if anybody needs coaching as a broker, reach out to Jim. The info is going to be listed below. And again, thank you guys so much. Take care. And next time we'll talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.